Already serving as one of the town's most innocent and lovable characters, Victor's story gets another heartbreaking layer as he finally meets his father again in from Season 3, Episode 5. Since From's lighthouse portal took Tabitha to Camden, Maine, Victor's hometown, and eventually brought her to his father, Henry, the hit horror series has been working up to a bittersweet reunion for the Kavanaugh family. This development finally came to fruition in from Season 3, Episode 5's ending, as Henry officially arrived in town alongside Tabitha after being separated from his son for over 40 years. When Victor is first told about Henry's arrival, he refuses to believe it's true. Shortly after becoming trapped in town as a child, Victor's mother and sister tragically died, which left him virtually alone for decades. Back home, Henry eventually came to accept that his wife and children died, with this belief being shattered by Tabitha's sudden arrival in Maine. In Season 3, Episode 5, From's trapped characters finally stumble upon each other outside, with the hesitant family reunion culminating in a hug, tears, and a gut-wrenching declaration from Victor that he didn't know how to get home to Henry. Victor's guilt over not being able to return to Henry makes his From story so much sadder. Victor felt bad about not coming home to his dad. Victor and Henry's reunion was already among the most emotional scenes of From's entire series so far, but holding back tears became impossible after Victor expressed his guilt about being trapped. When hugging his father, the first family member Victor has seen in more than 40 years, he cries and confesses to Henry that he didn't know how to get home. Completely out of his control, Victor has been stuck in From's sinister town by himself for decades, yet he tragically harbors guilt about not being able to return to his dad, the only remaining member of his family. While Henry feels guilty about not being able to find Victor and accepting his death, Victor has been holding on to guilt about not returning home to his dad since he was a child. It's truly heartbreaking to see this vulnerability in Victor, as his arrested development has made him virtually remain that little boy whose mother and sister died for the past 40 years. The show hasn't gone into much detail about Victor's efforts to leave the town after Christopher's From tragedy, so it's devastating to finally hear that he desperately tried to find his way back to his dad. Why Victor initially refuses to see Henry in From Season 3, Episode 5. Victor convinced himself his past life was a dream. Victor leaning against a post looking stressed and tired in From Season 3. While audiences have been eagerly waiting for Victor and Henry's reunion since the latter's arrival in From Season 3, Episode 3's ending, both men are scared after such a long separation. Victor, in particular, rejects the idea that Henry is there, perhaps believing it's a trick on behalf of the town's evil forces. Ultimately, Victor doesn't want to see Henry because he's nervous that his father may not welcome him with open arms. Victor isn't the 10-year-old boy that his father remembers, so how would he react to the sight of his son who has aged more than 40 years? Not to mention, Victor's way of dealing with the trauma of his mother and sister's deaths led him to convince himself that any memory of the outside world wasn't real. Therefore, he came to believe that his memories of Henry were just a dream. Seeing Henry would shatter this concept while reopening the painful wounds of his family's tragedies. As it turns out, Henry had very similar fears about reuniting with Victor, as he's very different from the father that little boy would remember. Thankfully, their bittersweet From reunion is ultimately full of love and acceptance for the other.